welcome back, everybody. It's probably about half an hour away from closing the session. As French had pointed out, when he opened the summit, a lot of our time right now, but my time is really being spent in listening to customers, understanding what's really going on, both in terms of execution, but also, what is really changing in the market. Over the last probably 6 months, I've met with probably 100 of our customers, several prospects, just hoping to keep a pulse on the changes, but they're too fast. They're just changing too fast. So what I would request is, the next few minutes, 3 minutes, we're actually going to just highlight many things that we're hearing from customers across the world. I've been quite privileged to have, even in the last 2 weeks, traveled to the Middle East, to APAC, Europe, of course, America, where we're based, or I'm based. And there seem to be themes that are emerging. And these are both tactical as well as strategic, as well as, market-facing changes that are happening. So the next 3 minutes, I would request, as these customer quotes come out, please stand up, okay, if it pertains or relates to you. You're facing the same challenge or the same questions. And we'll see, how synonymous this is with the audience we have today. So, Molly, go ahead, please. First one, standing. Standing on this. Mark, you can take a seat. Okay. We were expecting a lot more people to stand up, but I saw people standing and sitting. Adila from MMI was standing throughout on every comment here. But really, I mean, this has really come from customers, really real experiences. And we've been, as I said, quite fortunate to take a lot of these inputs constantly. We can't act on everything, but a lot of our thinking around what to do and how to do is coming from the customer base. Yeah? So what we did is really, identify some broad themes here. So just identified a set of broad themes. First is really global complex ecosystems. Everybody's facing this. Yeah? There's a focus on performance, clearly. It's not about post-assurance function anymore. It's also about how to focus on performance. Simplicity, efficiency, and productivity. Last couple of years, the momentum on this, on how to create more simple, more efficient, and more productive GRC has been on the rise from most of our customers. Yeah? The age of big data, cloud, and AI, whether most people understand it or what to do with it, but this clearly is a theme emerging in all of our conversations here. The power of integrated GRC, what does it really mean and how is it powerful? Why can't I just do my own group's risk function and let the others deal with the rest? Culture and change management. You heard a lot about this over the last 2 days on how to create a culture, how to create a risk sensitive culture across the organization. Empowering the first line. This is one thing that interestingly started to emerge more from the non-banking world or the non-financial services world, because for a long time they've been dealing with operational issues on the ground, and they didn't really have a lot of risk function or a formal risk function for a long time. But we're now starting to see this in financial services. How do you push more and more of risk management to the front line, because they are the people who are actually doing most of the work. And the last thing is partnership. How do you work with partners to enable, to get supported, because the world is getting more and more complex, and there are skill sets that are not all sitting within a particular organization. So just quickly delving into some of these themes, if you look at the global complex ecosystem, clearly there's a massive amount of disruption happening, whether you look at GDPR, look at Brexit, look at immigration, look at the political situations in many of the countries. Disruption is happening faster. The World Economic Forum had put together a set of risks, the top risks in 2017, and these risks are really highly interconnected, if you will. So whether it is exposed to litigation or exposed to jurisdictions of multiple countries, for example, versus just your parent country where you're operating from. Or there's a customer that I met a couple of weeks ago who said that, can you create a loss exchange for us only for this region? So you got this ORX and you got BBT and gold and all of that stuff, but it really doesn't, is not relevant as much to us. We want it for our region. And this was in the Middle East. Can we get together, for example, 5 countries, because we see the same kind of hacking patterns or same kind of breach patterns emerging from one country to the other to the next one. Another customer I met on the hyper connectivity here is, they said, I think you saw a slide there that said that can we, we're talking about blockchain, okay, can we use, more blockchain-based technology to, share information around risk? So far it's been around currencies, around encrypted cryptocurrency, if you will, but can we use that to actually, share more information between peers and the organizations and regulators so that the flow of information is much faster? And we all know that the impact of interconnected world is that something very far away can hit you, and it can hit you faster. Similarly, if you look at the failures that have happened, these are global failures. I mean, Equifax, for example, is not just limited to the US. Okay, if you look at Taiwan's mega bank fined by New York regulator, is kind of crossing jurisdictions, is crossing a whole set of crossed over world that didn't happen 10 years ago. And the cost of compliance or the cost of risk is very high, and part of it is to do with the fact that things are connected, whether it's product liability or it is bid rigging or it's Walmart spending enormously just to make sure that their FCPA, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act is protected. Things like those, they are global and they're interconnected pretty strongly. So as we all are thinking about how to manage this, this is a real risk and it can emerge from anywhere, anytime. The second big theme really is focus on performance here. On performance, as we all know, for many, many years, particularly in the last 5 years, a lot about risk management and GRC has been about really assuring the functions, ensuring controls are in place, ensuring adherence. More and more, what we are finding now is that as we're talking to people, risk managers and GRC professionals have a lot more insights into the business than they probably had many years ago. So they want to be, and they need to be on the strategy table of companies. They need to be on the revenue side. I was speaking with MMI, Adila here, and was talking to her about what, would create significantly more value, even as a risk professional. And the answer I got from her, one of the answers I got was that, if you can help us read our risk profiles and our data and tell us how to increase revenue, where can I sell more of the insurance products? How can I package insurance products, so that the revenue, grows versus just being a risk function, or post-assurance risk function, that would be, significantly better, right? So the value chain is changing. Similarly, we talk to credit card company, and these are just some examples. How do you create competitive advantage, from the risk organization? How do you have operating controls for not just operating controls, but also faster go-to-market? Let's say you have things already organized. Can you enter a new market with a new opportunity faster because you know how to enter that market from a control and a compliance perspective? These are all advantages that you can take. I mean, these are all things that you can take advantage of. Similarly, risk scores for vendor risk management is not just about scoring a vendor. It's about tying it to vendor performance. And also tying it to chargebacks, in the case of the physical world or the virtual world or the IT world. These are all related to actually performance indicators versus just risk scoring or risk analysis. Credit policy changes based on risk patterns. We've had a bank who's worked with us where their credit risk review process has enabled them to change their credit policy for certain markets, geographies, certain segments. So all these are examples where companies are now starting to head towards performance, and many of you are doing that here as well. But this is a general theme we are hearing. How do you tie GRC to performance? Third thing is really about simplicity, efficiency, and productivity. I mean, this is a theme, clearly emerging. With the advent of the cloud, younger workforce, mobility, all of that stuff, people are getting more and more used to, consumerized applications. They want simple, they want easy, they want it on their mobile, they want it anywhere, anytime, and we are definitely seeing that trend. The other thing is that from an efficiency perspective, clearly we are entering, we are entering a world where it's important to understand that greater efficiency actually drives, real ROI. So for a long time, or even now, sometimes we see fear driving decisions, whether it's a regulatory requirement or it's an audit requirement or it is an external audit requirement, whatever, that drives some of the decisions. But clearly, things are starting to head where, you are looking at more efficiency from a whole set of perspective, whether it's increased or reduction in time on how you go about the compliance report production or rationalizing controls by getting groups together. All of these things, people are absolutely talking more and more about, and how to use both technology, but also internal processes and rationalization and peer group discussions to do that. And clearly, because of consumerization of the applications and younger workforce, coming into GRC, the expectation is getting higher and higher on lean, intuitive, contextual, efficient. It's not just about looking at a report. I need to look at my report. Hopefully, the system will be able to do that, or the data will be able to give me what is contextual to me versus a generic, report or analytics around it, right? The fourth thing really is so much discussion. Every single meeting probably I go to, the conversation around deep learning, around AI, around big data, cloud is happening. There's clearly a lot of information. The velocity, volume of information has gone up through the roof, and it just keeps going up. And the ability to actually consume that information for real insights is the challenge, that companies are facing. Yes, there's a lot of big data companies, there's a lot of AI companies, but the ability to actually contextualize that information is absolutely critical. So if you look at it, I mean, in the past, a lot of the focus was on what has happened. Okay, how do you aggregate information? Why did it happen? Okay, now more and more discussions have been on why is it happening. So it's more present. The ability to consume data and get to understanding the analytics behind it and the insights behind it is definitely a lot better than 5 years ago. But where we're increasingly going into is what is likely to happen. In certain functions, we do that more effectively. But, at the core operations, companies are asking and wanting to know more about what is going to happen. And then, of course, what has to be done. So what are the kind of scenarios? What are the decisions? What are the constraints? And how do you, again, tie this back to core performance versus just looking at this information in isolation? What's cooking, some of the discussions that we are having, and that's in the labs for us as well, is really the transition to the modern cloud and what we call hyperconvergence. So not going into the details, but it allows for new levels of architectures are changing clearly. Okay, companies have private cloud, they're a lot more comfortable with the external cloud, and cloud is not just about your infrastructure, it's about your data, it's about external source of information. How do you harness that power to get more and more information as well as infrastructure so that you're not just managing, what other people can manage better. But essentially, business value chains are being transformed or will be transformed with seamless flow of information and data across the whole cloud infrastructure, if you will, right? So this, these transitions could usher in a new era of regulations, risk, governance requirements. Okay, that's the cloud security part or the cloud governance part, but cloud is in here to stay now. The second thing is really, we talked briefly about this earlier, blockchain layering in GRC. We are seeing a lot of, starting out with financial services, but also we are seeing a lot in retail, for example, where companies are starting to utilize, the concept of blockchain away from just currency, and financial services to, to really trying to manage how they could manage their data, information, and across different aspects, whether it's vendor risk or risk assessments or even auditing on a continuous basis. And essentially sharing information, with peers, etc., with relevant amount of integrity and controls in place here. And then, the pervasiveness of AI, essentially, with a lot of advances that have happened, whether it's Amazon or Google or, or Apple, we are seeing that more and more of the AI is being combined, is being combined with machine learning, and we have to continue to learn. The systems have to continue to learn to get more and more relevant data. And these, hopefully, over the next couple of years, is going to give significant gains in both performance, but also in rationalization of costs and automation of what we do in our daily lives as risk professionals. And then, Internet of Things is real now. I mean, a lot of investment is happening in the market, obviously, on creating, the last mile device into more powerful tools, if you will. And based on this, and according to Gartner, there'll be almost 21 billion devices by the end of 2020 that are interconnected. That is going to expose a whole set of risks, and it's going to expose a whole set of opportunities as well, to be able to harness information, understand and do better as a business, whether you're financial services or you're in the airline business or you're, an energy company. These are all coming, or you're a pharma company or a device company. This is hitting faster than we think here. We have Tesla, right next to our headquarters, and they're really a software company. I mean, they've been able to do certain things, forget a little bit of a hiccup they've had in the last, 2 months on production, but they've been able to do, you sit in a Tesla, it's really a software company that's connecting multiple things together. So the next thing really is the power of integrated GRC. And here, we've all discussed this over the last couple of days. It's not easy. There's a temptation still that, okay, why can't I just do my piece and move on? And I've talked to many customers even in the last 2 days where they're in different levels of maturity. Okay, so starting from level 1 maturity to level 5 maturity in terms of how they're bringing these GRC elements together. Clearly, duplication, unclear enterprise-wide view, understanding of compliance, effectiveness measurement, regulatory penalties and fines. These are typically the themes that companies are exposed to, but the maturity levels are different here. And they're all coming from either a approach that might be unstructured or from silos, sorry, lack of flexibility, okay, or very importantly, lack of clear accountability. Number of discussions we've had in the last 2 days on who really owns it, who can drive this. You need people, and many of them have talked to you over the last couple of days and talked to you, between yourselves, that there is a need for accountability and a clear vision of where you want to go. It might be a 5-year journey, it might be a 3-year journey, but there is accountability needed. There has to be change agents. There has to be somebody who takes onus of saying that, okay, I want to get this together because these are the benefits. And again, data here, but there's a interesting mix, between people who are unsure, between people who have best of breed, companies that have what we call a centralized GRC platform and a federated platform. So, and this is not about system, it's about your process and your thinking and your level of maturity in the organization. And these are just some of the benefits that you can take back. I mean, I'm sure you're understanding this, you're analyzing and even quantifying this in your daily jobs, but this is the thematic things that are coming in. I feel that number 6, okay, is going to keep rising every year. This was actually lower and lower in the last couple of years. The ability to present meaningful information analysis is going to keep rising, in my opinion, in the ranking order here, as we have seen over the last few years. Culture and change management. Change is hard. We've heard it. I'm sure I've been privy to some discussions in the lunchroom as well between our customers. It is hard. There are companies that have been doing this for years, a certain way. Things are changing. Velocity of information change. I mean, the quantum of information is changing, and we have to adapt. It is hard. GRC touches almost every part of the organization. Okay, both functionally, but also in terms of the risk and compliance and governance groups itself. Whether it's audit, risk management, compliance, security, ERM, audits, incidents, all of that, they are all part of the broad umbrella of GRC. And like you heard from a lot of people, have a vision, but let's take it bite-size. Okay, have a vision. Most of our customers that have done well have had a vision of the next 3-5 years, but have actually taken bite-sized steps to actually evolve and make sure that it's successful in buckets here. And then the last couple of things, this is an interesting one. What clearly we are hearing again, for a lot of the cost of compliance has also kept going up over the last 10-12 years. It's just kept going up. Okay, the number of I still remember one of the large banks in the US. The day they let go of 20,000 people in their organization, they hired the same day they had hired about 1,200 auditors. So the cost has gone up, okay, and is going up. And what we are finding, organizations, now starting to empower the first line of defense, or at least talking about it. So really, the action is in the first line. That's where part of the risk assessment, the testing, self-identification of issues, policy attestations, background checks, when you're doing compliance, have to happen. For too long, certain organizations have done it at level 2 or level 3, and the cost has kept going up here. So we are, both from a technology or a process perspective, it's important that we are starting to push it down. I remember, I was speaking with, I don't know if Gatwick Airport, they're here, but I spoke to them in the morning, and it is interesting that they want most of their risk to be actually managed at the ground floor, by the person who's doing the ground baggage handling. Just like Mark Gibbs from Denata Emirates had talked about yesterday, they don't want to be the assurance function. They want a small team, but they want to make sure that the frameworks are set correctly, the planning is happening appropriately, the libraries are being created so that it can scale across the organization. And then the assurance functions have to assure. We find a lot of customers still where the first line controls are being tested by the third line, and whether that's appropriate or not, I'm not the one to comment, but you can see efficiency starting to rise if we start to move a lot of the risk appetite, the risk assessments down to the first line where the work is actually happening. And then the last thing really is about, partnership. It's a pretty, again, coming back to the interconnected world, it's a pretty interconnected world, and skill sets are evolving. Okay, and the important thing here is that, they could be residing with a consulting firm, an advisory firm, with a data firm that does data extremely well, with a platform provider like ours. It could be sitting within the organization, and even within the organization, it could be sitting in certain pockets where you have to almost, bring out and leverage the skill sets that we all need here. So here, clearly, Metricstream, we want to be a partner, from a technology perspective or good practices. We, as you've seen, this is a good community that has come together here, and we don't claim we know it all, but we have had the battle scars and the good and the bads of having done this for many years with many of the customers that are sitting in this room and many more. So we do, feel that we could form a really good partnership with many of you, or all of you, to bring some of these good practices, good and bad, both, to the table. A community, this is just I think when Gunjan had opened the conference, we talked about 220 odd people here. There's a big virtual community out there as well. Not just on us. We have, for example, we have our own community on Jive, where you can participate once you go out of this room as well. But also we have a LinkedIn community that is talking a lot about issues that are happening out there. It's a little more open community, but a lot of it is about peer. I don't know if John is here from Stanchart. He said the biggest value I got here was open and transparent communication and sharing of information with my peer group here. And that's what we had set this up for. This is not a marketing place. We're not trying to market Metricstream. We feel that this community can share, and we will learn a lot from it here. Our product roadmaps are indexed on that here. From a learning perspective, whether it's learning from each other or from our partners, our advisors, our own GRC University, which is the MSU, Metricstream University, all these are useful tools that you can take back, for us to facilitate this conversation. And the last thing is partners, and partners are absolutely critical to us. So whether they're the advisory firms who are very good at certain things, whether it's the system integrators, whether they're content partners, we partner with a whole range of content providers, whether it is, data providers. So there's a whole range of people who are part of this global ecosystem of GRC, and we just have to make sure that we are leveraging the whole network more and more. And the last thing really is, and this is just a final plug as we are ending here. So clearly, we believe in thought leadership, technology leadership, innovation, delivery, and our global, partner base across the world. So that's what I really had. The other thing that we wanted to do is, and let me just pause. Any questions for any of our leadership team here before we wind up? So one thing I wanted to highlight is that, and we'll probably do it next, but based on the conversations that we had here over the last 2 full days, and for some people who came in earlier on Sunday as well, as we do in every summit, clearly the last 20-25 minutes that I've spent has been really indexed on all the conversations over the last 6 months that we've collectively had as a company. But here's the top 10, from the last 2 days here. The first one, in the top 10 from Lord Darling, and I'm assuming most of you were there for the fantastic opening remarks from him. But Brexit is a self-inflicted wound, and there's going to be uncertainty for a long time. The second one from Jonathan Bamford. GDPR is modernizing data protection and really pushing organizations to become more proactive. And it has, obviously more consequences than just personal information. It's also, we're finding that just like it happened with SOX, it's allowing companies to think about their data privacy broader than just the GDPR initiative. Sylvie Fauquet from the Single Resolution Board. Perfect is the enemy of good. Mark Gibb. Most of his operational risks are related to lives. That's what they manage. Rose Chapman from Travelport. Clearly, some of the themes that we're hearing from other customers play out here as well. David from Mazar, is he still here? Probably is. Culture is the corporate immune system and can fight off virus. And I think we heard from a number of other people in the last couple of days on this topic. But it has to be coming from the top. William Bain, clearly how to manage uncertainty through leadership. Brenda, she had a couple of very good presentations. It talked about risk management ever evolving. And we are seeing this every day. I mean, themes that were there a year ago, or 6 months ago, 3 months ago have changed already. Len Sinclair from Barclays, he was there this morning, focusing on the set of right things to do, and the regulators will be happy. And then finally, from Gunjan Sinha, our chairman, talking about the voice of the customer, the power of now, and the age of AI. So for all these 10 people and all of you who've participated, I want to give you a big hand. Thank you for participating. And for people, I just wanted to highlight that our next summit here, before we wrap up today, is actually going to be in Baltimore on June 3rd, from June 3rd to 6th. We will have a summit in Europe as well soon. Just about a year later, we'll be announcing it soon. And we'll announce both the dates as well as the location. But this is an ongoing journey for not just us, but many of you. I'm very happy to see many of you come repeatedly and also participate in both of our summits, both in the US and here. Europe this year has become as large, or getting to be as large. By the way, our EMEA summit is getting to be as large as the US summit. But we definitely urge, because the audience is mixed, and we definitely urge you to participate and see if you can make it there as well. The last thing I want to do is just really, really thank a few people. And it really starts off with our customers, people who are here. I want to start and end with you. Thanks for taking out time. It's not easy. I know many of you are extremely busy, and it's an investment from your side to come here and invest 2.5 days, with us. So a big hand to all of you, and some of you who had to leave as well.